So we'll now be moving on to a talk from our very own James Brockbank. So for those of you who don't know, James is our MD here at Digitaloft, which is a multi-award-winning digital PR and search marketing agency. So over the past 2 years, James has spoken at the world's leading SEO marketing conferences, Brighton SEO, YostCon, Learn Inbound, and more. And today, James is going to be talking about how to integrate digital PR into your content and SEO strategy.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Abby. So thank you very much for attending today. Obviously, myself, Abby, and the whole team at Digitaloft have worked really hard over the last few months to bring what is a really, really great day. You know, we set out when we launched the summit last year to bring together some of the brightest minds in digital PR. And I think we've done that. You know, it's been a really great day. We've still got some great sessions from Dominique, from Will, and from Ram Fishkin. And before that, I want to talk today about integrating digital PR into your SEO and content strategy. But whilst I was putting together the deck, what very quickly dawned on me is that what I'm really talking about today are the reasons why your latest digital PR campaign had absolutely no impact whatsoever on your client's SEO performance. I'm an SEO, I'm a link builder. I've been doing this about 12, 13 years. And over that time, I've bought links, I've used private blog networks, I've written guest posts, I've produced a shit ton of really spammy infographics. Those things worked at the time. Today, 2021, I am a huge champion of using digital PR to earn great links. And I think where we find ourselves as an industry right now is that link building has almost become a dirty word. We're almost a little bit embarrassed to talk about building links, about the need for links, but the reality remains that we need links to rank. Most of us aren't lucky enough to be working on websites that already have tens of thousands of links that earn links simply by publishing great content without amplifying it. And links aren't going away anytime soon. But when we talk about sort of black hat SEO and white hat SEO, I mean, to me, I've always been very much a do what works hat SEO. Right now, that's using digital PR to build links. But being the SEO side, rather than maybe the PR background, it means I need to see results from any activity that I'm investing in for myself or clients. And that means I want to see charts that look like this. Whether that's clicks, that's impressions, the graphs need to be going up to the right. We need to be seeing a return on the activities that we're using. Now, what I will say is that digital PR can earn better links than pretty much any link building tactic. But I'm not a fan of using digital PR as a link building tactic. It's not a link building tactic. We shouldn't be referring to it as that. Why? Because digital PR can drive so much more than just links. But from an SEO perspective, digital PR can and does help you to win big during core algorithm updates. Here's a screen grab of the visibility increase for a client of ours that we were working on right through 2020. What changed from 2019? We really doubled down and pivoted that digital PR strategy in a slightly different way from the middle of the year. We were massively rewarded for that in December's core algorithm update. We see this all the time. We also see the opposite of it, which I'll come on to shortly. But aside from links, digital PR can build links that get clicked, that drive referral traffic. And that traffic should convert into sales. We shouldn't be creating things that don't get clicked. If a link doesn't get clicked, then that pretty much says it's not relevant or that nobody cares, or it's not on a publication that has that visibility. And lastly, going against the PR side of things, we should be landing coverage that builds brand awareness. And this is perhaps more important from an SEO perspective than I think some of us will often like to admit. And as an industry over the past few years, we've got pretty good at talking about campaign failures. We've had various conferences, various blog posts, various pieces of content published that talk about the failures, the reasons why campaigns fail, what this means and what we can do. However, this is often talking about the reasons campaigns fail. What happens when a campaign doesn't earn links, doesn't land that coverage? And what we don't often talk about are the campaigns that earned lots of links, earned lots of coverage, but that didn't increase organic visibility. We delivered something, but that something wasn't necessarily what we were expecting or what we were targeting on. And we see sort of two scenarios here. The first of these is when visibility flatlines. We invest resources, we launch campaigns, we get clients to buy in, and visibility flatlines. There is no impact or no visible impact in the results from organic search. Or on the other side of it, in the worst case scenario, is when visibility actually declines. And I'm not afraid to share, this is a campaign that we worked on last year. This campaign actually went viral, I think way over 1,000 pieces of coverage and links. We saw a spike, and in the months that followed, we actually saw visibility decline. Now, I will comfortably say that the links were relevant, the links were quality, but there were underlying issues on the site, which meant the reality is those links had very little impact or a negative impact on organic growth. So today I want to talk about what's going on here. I want to sort of get us thinking about the reasons why we don't see the impact from organic search through digital PR activity. And to start this conversation, we need to step back to 2012. 3 months after Google first launched their Penguin algorithm, Google started talking in search engine land here about the fact that they were now ignoring links, and that you don't always have to be removing links, disavowing links, and that Google was ignoring many links. Now, fast forward a further 8 years, and we see John Mueller talking about guest posting and how Google is ignoring links through guest posts. Again, we'll look at things that he shared on Twitter. Google are ignoring links, and Google have trained their algorithm with lots of data to be able to do this. And we need to be thinking about this as SEOs, as PRs. If we're investing time, resources, money into activities, are we seeing the impact? Or is Google ignoring some of these links? And again, why it's sort of dangerous to go on link numbers alone. And then about 3 weeks ago, we saw this. I'm actually really surprised that everyone hasn't had this in their deck today. But John Mueller tweeted out essentially an endorsement of digital PR as a link building tactic, essentially saying that it's sometimes as critical, if not more so, than technical SEO. But what I want to focus on here is John's comment that digital PR often gets bucketed with spammy link building. Now, if we'd have been talking 2 years ago, I think we'd have struggled to find many people who would pair digital PR with spammy link building tactics. Why? Because I think we were all of this sort of understanding that PR links were the holy grail. And it's not necessarily the case, but I want to dig into why this might be. And we need to start by understanding that links should be earned as a byproduct of amplifying your brand. If the real focus and approach we're taking is to promote, to amplify, to push out the message of who a business is, what their products are, who their people are, then these are the best links from an SEO perspective. We don't, I think we can all safely assume that these links aren't being ignored. And to add to that, we don't actually know which links Google are ignoring, which they don't. Step back to 2011, 2012, when we first started seeing manual penalties at scale, Google was giving us examples of links that they were penalizing on. When links are ignored, we don't get that insight. So moving on a little bit, we're still in 2013 here. Google's Matt Cutts, head of web spam at the time, started talking about how Google was working on an algorithm to determine which site was a subject authority. Now, this is huge. And when we sort of come onto it from an SEO perspective, these are the things that we need to be thinking about. If Google was working on ways to determine who the experts were in 2013, they sure as hell can do that now. So why are we still seeing campaigns like this? This was an example that was shared in the thread that John Mueller put out a few weeks ago. 100 TV shows ranked by the final episode. Now, what I will say is this was a great piece. It was well thought out. It was well executed. But this was launched for a loan lender. What the hell have TV show episodes got to do with a loan lender? This is perhaps the best example that's going round right now of something being done just for links. There is no topical relevance. It does not build and promote the messaging and that authority and who a business is. Talking about TV shows when you're loan lenders. And this is where we've started to see these conversations on spammy link building in line with digital PR. We've all done it. I've done it. I'm sure, absolutely done it. I think we were all guilty of it. but we have to keep evolving, and we have to keep moving forward in terms of what's working and what's delivering results right now. And we can define this as topical authority, positioning yourself, your clients, as experts in their field, and positioning that that authority and that expertise with both on-page factors, our content on the site, and the off-page factors, which are the links we're building. And digging even further into this and looking at where this comes from in a bit more of an SEO and a Google perspective, we have this concept of topic-sensitive PageRank. Here's a great visual that I grabbed from Moz, and the examples we've got here are the same website, both which are creating content on football, but those links come from two different sections of the same publication. Let's assume this publication is something like the New York Times. One link comes from the sports section, the other link comes from the politics section, both to the same site. I'm sure I don't need to point out which the better link is here. It's the one that comes from the sports section because it passes a greater level of topic sensitive PageRank. Again, this is not a new concept. And we need to remember that Google is still using PageRank after many, many years. And we don't often talk about it. PageRank is not just the toolbar that we used to see in our browsers. Essentially, PageRank is worked into the core of Google's algorithm. But if we look at where this comes from, it comes from, well, topic-sensitive PageRank at least, comes from a paper produced by somebody at Stanford University, who then later went on to be a Google engineer. For many, many years now, this whole concept of topic-sensitive PageRank has existed, and we need to be thinking along these lines as SEOs and as PRs. And what this means in 2021 is that digital PR and SEO must work together. And over the next 10 minutes or so, I want to talk about 6 things, 6 areas that we should be thinking about as digital PRs that can have an impact on the SEO performance of our sites, of our client sites, and how we should be thinking when running our own campaigns and activity. So the first challenge that we need to consider is, are links what's really holding you back? Now, what I mean by this is that PR-driven links are not a magic wand, and they will usually not compensate for other SEO issues. And we can pretty much break this down into content issues and tech SEO issues. So looking at content firstly, we need to be asking, is our content good enough? Now, I know that's very subjective, but we need to be asking the question on, is this content good enough to rank? If it's not, links aren't going to have the impact that they could. Are you guilty of launching copycat content? We're in this position right now where I think people often say, okay, we want to create a piece of content. Let's go to the search. Let's have a look at what the top 3, top 5 ranking sites and pages are talking about. And they'll essentially rewrite that content. That on its own isn't good enough. You are launching what we call copycat content. You need to say, how can we differentiate? How can we add value and do something a little bit different? That's why it's really important to work with experts when creating that site content. And then, have you considered searcher intent? One of the things that often isn't considered but should be is, what's the intent of the search and what results are showing? And a good way to demonstrate that when checking the SERPs is to run a search for credit cards. And what we see here is that the majority of the web pages that rank are from price comparison websites. They are giving many options into many different types of credit card. The intent here is for somebody who's looking to apply for a credit card to find the best card for them. Now, in most cases, that doesn't come from a credit card lender, a credit card company. That's being served by these price comparison websites that are, serving multiple options that are, essentially tailored to the need of the individual. And when it comes to looking at the quality of our content, we can at least get some quick insights from tools like Surfer SEO, which again, we can run through. We can start to gauge the quality of our content versus competitors, both from an authority perspective. Does it have, the link authority to rank? And does the content cover, the topic in enough depth compared to what's already ranking? But as I mentioned, we have to go beyond this, and we have to start thinking, how can we do something different? Don't fall into that trap of copycat content. And then we need to be thinking, does your site structure make sense? Now, our preference here is to be structuring a site using sort of the topic cluster model with pillar pages and cluster content. think about how your content is structured together, or are you just essentially publishing blind and creating a bit of a web of mess of pages that are, aren't really structured together? And then when we move on to the tech SEO side, we need to be asking, are our sites being held back by technical issues? If they are, links probably won't help you yet. We need to be prioritizing these fixes. We need to focus on fixing these things using Deep Crawl, Screaming Frog, team up with a great tech SEO. Have the confidence that there is nothing holding your site back before you start really investing heavily on essentially building links, amplifying the brand. And it comes down to asking ourselves, does our site deserve to rank? And I think the thing that's hard to swallow sometimes is that often the sites that, either we're working on as an agency or in-house, often they don't deserve to rank, at least not higher than what's already there. So we need to do what it takes and fix that and make sure that site does deserve to rank if we want to compete on the SERPs. So moving on to the second challenge, we have this whole thing about link velocity and a competitive link gap. Now, Chloe touched earlier on sort of running an audit to sort of plan strategies. And one of the things that we need to be asking is there a link gap with competitors that you need to close? Now, we can use Hrefs for this. I'm looking, the screen grab here is from the quick batch analysis tool. You need to know how your link profile stacks up against your competitors. Looking both at referring domains, total links, the ratio of follow to no follow. Essentially, you need to know what the quality is of your competitors' links. Why? Well, you need to know what you're competing against. You need to know what you're competing against to be able to put together a strategy that helps you to close this link gap. If your site has 200 unique referring domains and of comparable quality, your competitor has 2,000, you have a link gap to close. You can, you might be building links, you might be driving PR tactics. If you're not, if you're nowhere near to closing that link gap, that could be a reason why you're not seeing the growth that you expect. It doesn't mean that what you're doing is wrong. It doesn't mean that you're not building topically relevant links. It just means that you've got a link gap and you need to figure out how you're going to close that. And again, digging deep into who's linking to competitors, typically, and I'm looking at quality links here, I want to understand what sort of the link landscape is. But the other side of this is link velocity. Are your competitors earning links at a higher velocity than you are? Again, we can grab this pretty easily from Hrefs. Enter the domain through, we can see over the last year how many new referring domains have been picked up. But what we really want to understand here is how many links your competitors are earning on average each month. It's really quick to do this. Take today's link count minus last year's link count and divide it by 12. You have the average number of links being earned per month. And what this gives is a baseline to know what you need to compete against. Because when we look at a link gap, that is not a static number. That is always a moving target. Most sites are earning links every week, every month. And you need to know the average rate of this so you can work that into your own strategy to say, okay, well, to catch up, we need to build this, but to get a competitive advantage, we need to be building this, earning these links on top of the competitors. And I've been talking about how to do it manually. There are ways that we can do this to automate it. There's a really great platform, Link Intelligence, launched by a guy called Cody West. Please go and check it out. He's just launched a light version. And essentially what this does is it helps you remove the guesswork and gives link intelligence reports, which they're available in Tableau, and they will give you the data you need on backlink velocity, on the backlink gap, to be able to make these decisions, to put data behind how many links of what quality you need to be building per month to catch up and gain that competitive advantage. We need to be asking these questions. If we're not asking these questions, how can we feed these into a strategy that drives growth, that drives success? And then moving on to the third point, the third challenge that we face as SEOs and digital PRs is campaign coverage and link relevance. This is probably the big one right now. And we need to ask on every idea that we come up with, does this campaign amplify your brand to your target audience? Again, we've shown some examples of campaigns that maybe that are done just for links rather than amplifying a brand, amplifying a message. And there's many ways we can do this. The first one is to use brand or product coverage. This is sort of the ideal scenario in terms of relevance, but it doesn't always scale. A great example I can give you is a piece of coverage that we landed just last week for a client of ours who's a home renovation loan company over in the US. This was a piece of coverage landed on Bankrate. This is where their audience hangs out online. And this was a straight up piece of coverage, an article about their loan offering. They are disruptive. They are bringing something new to the market. And we'll land, right now our focus is landing coverage on that, almost this holy grail of coverage. But not every business is lucky enough to have this news, to have innovative or disruptive products that can be promoted. So in that case, make the news. Use campaigns that position you or your client as thought leaders in your space. Again, another example here, a piece of coverage we landed for a client on Time Out, essentially a data-driven index on the most scenic national parks in the US. Pretty standard sort of index-led campaign, performed really well. But the client that this was for is a content publisher in the outdoor space in the US. So those who are consuming content around the most scenic national parks in the US, it topically aligns perfectly with who this client is, who their target audience is. It's creating and amplifying content for their core target audience. And really it comes down to asking, do you have the authority to talk about this topic, and how relevant is it to your audience? And really, it's, would you still do this if Google didn't exist? If the answer is yes, then there's a really good chance you're creating content that amplifies your brand, whether that's product coverage or not. If it makes sense to be talking about this, then these are the best links. These are the best topically relevant piece of coverage and links that drive organic search impact. And one of the ways I like to think on this is planning out and understanding what I call a topic pyramid. So it starts by thinking about the problems you solve. And to give an example here, a conversation I had last week was with a company who are in the bad credit car finance space. So we place this at the top of the pyramid. The problem they solve, at that real sort of pinnacle point is buying a car with bad credit. But we can branch that out further to the topic of buying a car on finance. Again, a wider audience, a wider group of topics. And then really it's buying a new car. The outcome, even though their sort of core target audience is people with bad credit, that wider umbrella topic is buying a new car. So when we go really, really close, those tight topics, there are fewer coverage opportunities. We need to understand the media landscape. And when we move further away, that generates typically more opportunities for media coverage. We could go even further and branch this into, say, automotive or certain areas of the sort of wider topics. But the further we move out, the further removed the topical relevances. So these are the things we need to be thinking about. And then, of course, this question that we often get for largely on the link building side of digital PR is when we're earning unlinked coverage. Now, Ran Fishkin will be talking in a couple of hours, and Ran published a really great piece of content a couple of weeks ago about inferred links. Now, my take is that this will come. I don't believe we're seeing the use of inferred linking right now. It will come. How long off, I don't know. But what we know right now is that as SEOs, we need to and want to be building links. But as we saw from the journalist panel, a journalist isn't just going to add a link that's promotional. What's in it for them? They don't do favors. So links must add editorial value. So let's say we land a piece of coverage that isn't linked. We should be working as hard as we can to turn these brand mentions into links. The first step of doing this is to act fast. Now, acting fast is really important. The quicker we can get in touch with a publication and try and get that converted into a link, the better the chance of success. Ideally, you will do that within an hour, within half an hour of that publication, publishing that piece of content. You need to reach out and show the editorial value. Make it easy for a journalist or a publisher to understand why that link should be there. What's on the other end of the link that adds value to their readers, and show that, demonstrate it. And typically the approach we take here is we go from journalist to editor to corrections desk, depending on the success of the previous stage. There's typically a 3-step process that we follow to try and get those brand mentions turned into links. It's really, really important. You've done the hard work, you've landed the coverage, do what you can to turn them into links. The 5th challenge that I want to talk about here is strategic internal linking. Now, we shouldn't just be building link authority to our campaign pages and then doing nothing with it. We're missing a huge opportunity. We need to distribute the link authority to the pages that we're trying to rank. And a great example of this that I saw on Twitter a few years ago and has been doing the rounds is Paddy Mugan shared some data from themselves at Era on e-commerce category pages that they filtered link equity to via content-led link building campaigns were up 25% year on year versus the same page types which hadn't had this link equity past were up 8%. We see very, very similar numbers from the data we've run here at Digitaloft, and it just demonstrates why we need to be thinking in this way. But it's not just about passing the link equity anywhere. It's about passing relevance as much as link authority. We need to be carefully and strategically thinking, which pages can we boost? Which pages can we give the biggest impact to on rankings, on visibility with internal linking? So how do we approach this? Well, start thinking about which topics does the campaign relate to. Stop linking anywhere. We need to think, okay, what really relates? Where does it make most sense to be passing as much, topically related page rank as we can through to these pages? And also, which page is the primary target? We can run a quick site search to see which pages are ranking for the, an index for the query. Think carefully about which pages we want to push. And then also what anchor text we're using. Now, don't forget that it is okay to use keyword-rich anchor text for internal links. Whilst we would probably, never use it, at least in a manipulative way, for links from third-party sites, when it's internally linking, we should be doing this. And what I mean by this is we should be linking internally, passing link equity through with, as an example, cheap flights to New York rather than click here. Demonstrate that relevance, demonstrate, give those anchor text signals to increase the visibility. And then in terms of how we can internally link through, we have a few options. Ideally in body, use it in body, use internal links in the body of your campaign pages, or do so in sort of the methodology. That's also a place if there's no other alternative to do so. So looking at the last challenge that we face in terms of integrating digital PR into SEO strategies is consistency. Now, a single viral campaign will not drive the results you're looking for. We still get asked probably every single week, can you launch a viral campaign for us? We should not be talking in these ways anymore. In most instances, viral campaigns don't deliver what people expect them to for a number of reasons. And the first one is that anyone can get lucky. Just because you've had a viral hit once doesn't mean you can do it again. And that's not a strategy. And the other point is that if we are building hundreds and hundreds of links, how many of them are actually passing that really tight topical relevance, and how many are sort of references that don't really impact your brand? So the question is, how do you get consistent results? Well, you get consistent results by balancing tactics. That often means balancing sort of these big hero creative data-driven campaigns with always on reactive PR, expert insights, those sort of things. And a great example here is a campaign that we launch every quarter, the Cosmetify Index, a data-driven insight into the world's hottest beauty brands. This drives consistent results from, a big campaign, a big data-led piece that takes a lot of resources. But we balance that with really quick reactive expert insights. An example here was when we pitched out tips on how to do your brows at home during lockdown. This delivers consistent link acquisition. And I would take consistency over going viral every single time. That demonstrates that you are worth linking to, you're an authority, and that people are choosing to link over and over again. It reduces the risk. Diversify your tactics, and you will drive that consistency. So to wrap up from me, how do we integrate digital PR into an SEO strategy? Well, we first need to ask ourselves, do our sites deserve to rank? If they don't, go and tackle that first, fix that problem. Understand the link gap with competitors, especially their link velocity. Feed this into a strategy that helps you to understand how many links you need to be building, what quality, what is that link gap, and you can start to estimate when you could catch up and see that sort of increase in visibility that you're looking for and want to see. Focus on relevancy. Ask yourself, how can you amplify your brand? And work hard to turn brand mentions into links. If you're not, you are leaving really low-hanging fruit on the table that can be having an impact. I don't want to get too much into the follow versus no follow. No follow links do have a purpose. They do, they are valuable. Both from a wider SEO perspective and a wider brand. It's better to have a no follow link than no link at all in my eyes. And then understand internal linking. There's so many great resources out there on that. If you don't fully understand the best ways to internal link, take the time to read. It will have an impact on your results. And focus on consistency over going viral. So that's everything from me. Thank you very much. I hope we have a little bit of time for questions. I know I've probably run over a few minutes, but I'm sure we can make that up in the break.
Yeah, I'm sure we can squeeze in a few questions. Thanks for that, James. Really insightful. Lots to think about as always. So yeah, I'm sure we can squeeze in a few questions. The first of which being, how would you recommend gambling sites to get the national and regional pickup if they can't directly promote their services?
I knew you were going to ask that. Having seen the questions, I knew what you were going to ask. Gambling is probably the one sector where we still live in this world where a lot of journalists won't talk directly about casinos. Sports is a little bit easier. The way I would think about that, and the way we do think about that, is you have to step out of the box a little bit, but you have to be thinking what's relevant to the audience. Again, creating content for the audience. If you're on the sports betting side, what do journalists and what do the audience care about? Well, on sports, there are so many different things, whether that's insights on players, on teams, on historical performance. Sports is the easy side. When it's on the casino side, that's even harder. If you're talking, many publications will talk about odds in sports betting. Casinos is probably, it's hard, it's harder than payday loans. It's harder than a lot of the more realistic pharmaceutical. I would say gambling is still on a par with CBD. They're probably the two sectors to me where you have to go a little bit further out than you would most businesses, but everybody else is in the same boat. If you're a casino, it's okay to talk about sport, given that most sites, it's understanding it from a perspective of, you need these links. And I think the other one to add is that we're still in a world where a lot of gambling brands are still using private blog networks. They're still buying links. So, we're maybe a little bit behind some of the other sectors. At the end of the day, Google has to rank a site. Google has to rank these sites. And if you are building better links, again, it comes back to that understanding what other people are doing and staying as tightly topically relevant as you can without sacrificing that ability to build links at all.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. So kind of similar, sort of leading on from that, someone's asked, do you brainstorm for campaign ideas with the primary target or URL in mind, or do you add that sort of topical relevancy in at a later stage?
To me, it should be in at the campaign brief stage. You need to know, and it might not necessarily be target URL. It would probably be a topic area. Now, that's my belief that as SEOs we should be focusing, thinking beyond single keywords and looking at topics. If you're building out your site in a topic cluster model, the reality is that you have various different URLs depending on exactly what the campaign talks about. But certainly from a topical perspective, get it into campaign briefs, get it into brainstorm briefs, start thinking as early on as possible. Really, what are we trying to promote here? And that's where, these really shit hot ideas come that are really topically relevant come in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I reckon we've got time for maybe one more question.
Yeah, we'll do one more.
Let's have a look. So what are some off-page or off-site strategies that can improve rankings within search engine results pages in the organic search results?
Okay, cool. So in terms of, as I've just talked about, off-page SEO strategies, is digital PR is the one that still gives you the biggest bang for your buck, as it were, because of these wider brand impacts. But we shouldn't be ignoring things like resource link opportunities. Targeting resource pages, and I'm talking real resource pages here, not spammy directories, not things that are set up solely to sell links or build links. Real resource pages, which they exist on government sites, on travel and tourism boards, on local councils, on industry sites. They do exist. If you can land a link on there, they are relevant, they drive traffic. The purpose of them is often people who are looking to find a business or a service. That would be my other, but sort of then the other one is the whole concept of guest posting. It has been spammed to death. But if you look at it from a PR perspective, It's expert profiling. It's working in industry publications to contribute great content. We might not talk about it as guest posting, but when we look at it from that authority building, that's still really, really popular. But guest posting solely for the purpose of a link is dead in my eyes. It can work, but again, it's not the tactic you should be using if you really want to drive growth. So hopefully that answers the question. But I see there are a lot of others. So if anyone wants to reach out on Twitter, I will jump on straight away and respond to anybody.
Perfect. Thanks, James.
Cool. Thank you very much, Abby.